everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and happy May the 4th. We got a brand new series, Tales of the Underworld, which is the third of the Star Wars Disney Plus Tales of. We had, Tales of the Jedi, and then Tales of the Empire. So now it's Tales of the Underworld. I'm still waiting on Tales of the Sith / Dark Side, whatever they want to call it. I think we're all still waiting on that story. But this one was pretty good. In fact, I would go to say that this was much better than Tales of the Empire. I feel like Tales of the Empire was kind of lacking a little bit. This one we follow Asajj Ventress for 3 episodes, and then we follow Cad Bane for 3 episodes. And I think overall, and I imagine most people will agree with me, I kind of wish that we had at least one full season, like at least, 9 episodes at least for each one, because only getting 3 episodes, it feels like we got some interesting tidbits, especially with the Asajj Ventress stuff, where I'm like, I just would have watched a whole show of this. Like, I want to know what's gonna happen with her now. So there was basically a book, Dark Disciple. It was supposed to be a series of unfinished Clone Wars episodes, which you can actually see some of the animatics for. But they turn it into a book, Dark Disciple, where Quinlan Vos turns to the dark side in a secret attempt to assassinate Count Dooku, falls in love with Asajj Ventress. Asajj Ventress dies, and then for a while that was it. That was the end of her story. Basically this Clone Wars character basically just ends in a book, and then like that's what we got. And then she showed up again in the Bad Batch, which takes place after what her death was supposed to be, and it was left a mystery for about a year and a half, 2 years now since her appearance on Bad Batch. So it's been a mystery. How did she survive? What's going on? And now we finally got our answer. And admittedly, in this first episode, in fact, like the first, let's be honest, 5 minutes, they explain how she survived, and it's really just kind of Night Sister mumbo jumbo. Like, just like in the book, Obi-Wan and Quinlan Vos, they leave her body in one of the Night Sister ritual pools, whatever it is. They leave her body there, and immediately she hears Mother Talzin, and she sees the ghosts of all the other Night Sisters, and they're basically just tell her like, hey, for some reason, because Quinlan Vos loves you, that's gonna give you like the option to either live or just be with us in this other realm. So I don't really get it per se, but she's alive. That's all you really need to know. Somehow she went in there, some Night Sister magic happened, now she's alive, and that explains her appearance in the Bad Batch. I also am gonna imagine that her appearance in the Bad Batch happened right in between, obviously, the moment of her coming back alive and then the rest of the events that we see play out here. Because I will say, unlike the other Tales of series, the other 2 that we got, these group of 3 episodes are pretty consistently the same story. As in, Asajj Ventress meets this kid and is trying to get him to the path, and all 3 of the episodes are about that. So instead of jumping 3 years in the future and then 10 years in the future, just showing separate stories for each episode, it's really just one long episode or one long story for all 3. And I do think I prefer that. I feel like, we're able to at least focus on that one story more. It makes sense. But anyways, yeah, that's how Asajj Ventress is back. She's Night Sister mumbo jumbo magic. There's a lot of implications you can say here, because all the Night Sisters are dead, but they also do have their own afterlife realm where they're at. So what does that mean force-wise? Because, Jedi had to train to keep their individuality before becoming one with the Force. And, as I've discussed on this channel before, Night Sister magic, which uses the Echor substance from Dathomir, that is a form of dark side Force using. So their magic is still the Force. So, look, it's a different religion, it's a different culture. Somehow they have this different version of becoming one with the Force. It's Night Sister realm glowy, whatever it is. So I don't know if they're ever gonna explain it in full detail. I think it does work better if you kind of just leave it vague, leave it as a mystery. How does the Night Sister stuff work? It's just magic, you know, like just leave it there. It's Force connected magic through a different culture. So there you go. Anyways, Asajj Ventress meets this kid, trying to get him to the path, and basically they just go on different adventures. They ask her old bounty hunter crew, which we met in the Clone Wars, and of course there's, you know, backstabbing ensues there. And then they meet this old separatist guy who, I guess he was in the military of the separatists. He had a bunch of, you know, war medals, separatist war medals, which I always find it fascinating whenever we come across separatist citizens or just other humans who are not, you know, the main like separatist leaders or Jedi assassins or anything. It's like just a guy, you know. It happened a couple times in the Clone Wars, but like you kind of forget that there were all these planets that seceded from the Republic, and while yes, the main separatist leaders were the corrupt, you know, the banking clan and the trade federation and all that stuff, and everyone was ultimately manipulated by Darth Sidious, there were still normal people inside of that system. Like, there were normal senators who, they didn't know about the evil plot. They thought this was for real. You know, and that's kind of the guy they come across now. You know, he was some kind of military guy, you know, and he's a true believer. He's a true believer of the separatist cause, and he even basically says as much. He recognizes who Asajj Ventress is. He's like, man, shame about the war. It looks like our side was right. Which you could make the argument that they were, because of course the Republic turned into the Empire, and they ultimately did become the bad guys. So, you know, in kind of a warped sense of view, you could say that the Separatists were on the correct side, even though ultimately they were both being manipulated. I don't think it really mattered who won. Either way, I think we would have had an empire. I don't think Palpatine cared which way the war ultimately ended up happening. You know, whichever way was easiest, he's still in charge, so it doesn't matter. He's playing both sides. Anyways, so they end up finding the path after, you know, making peace with this whole water situation. And I think my one thing is, like, I was so hoping that we were gonna get at least a Quinlan Vos, like another showing of him. Maybe Asajj sees him, but then she's like, oh, I can't go over there because that would, you know, like, Mother Talzin said something about like, oh, your heart's desire is the cost of you joining the living again. So, like, I don't know what exactly would happen if she met Quinlan Vos and they tried to be together. Like, would that cause her to just drop dead? Like, because of the magic? I don't really know, you know. That's how vaguely explained it was. But I was hoping we would at least get some kind of reunion there, and we don't get that, unfortunately. They do find the path. It's just some people on a ship, and then they fly away. So I don't know if you can like trace that ship back to the ones that we saw in Obi-Wan, the Kenobi show, and like, oh, it is the exact same ship that you saw in that show. Maybe it is, I don't know. But the kid that she was taking ultimately decides to not go on there and stay with Asajj Ventress, and they're just together now, you know. So I have to assume she's gonna try to train him further, because he seemed like he was just a Padawan, right? So I assume she's gonna finish his training, and then there you go. And now we're kind of, and that's kind of the funny thing with Star Wars, is like they will come back, fill in some gaps, but kind of no matter what, unless they, you know, kill a character off definitively and never plan to bring them back, it's difficult to get an ending, you know, because now Asajj Ventress is with this kid and she's gonna do who knows what. I don't know. Are they gonna be bounty hunters? Are they gonna save Jedi? Are they gonna fight Inquisitors? Are they gonna show up in the next Jedi Order game? Are they gonna, like, who even knows? There's so many things that they could do, and it's just another, like, there you go. It's like we come back to these dangling threads in the franchise, and we tie up a little bit of stuff, but at the end we still leave a dangling thread. So years down the road, we'll come back to Asajj Ventress again, and we'll see, what are they doing? Did she train this kid? Is he dead? Is he alive? I don't know. I think my other thing, and you know, I have long passed the point where this bothers me, so I don't care about this, but you know that there's people out there who, the fact that we have another Jedi alive, Order 66, right? Like, it feels like every project, there's another Jedi who somehow survived. And I'm fine with that, because I know, like, statistically, it's like, okay, you know, there were, what, 5,000 left, and then you could say that 90% of them died. That would still leave room for quite a handful of Jedi, right? So we're fine. But, you know, still, just like I said with the lingering threads, it's like, okay, so now we have another Jedi who, you know, we don't see in the original trilogy. We don't see him show up in Rebels or the sequel trilogy or anything like that. So just like, you know, Cal Kestis and the dozen other Jedi, now we're like, okay, so what happened to this kid? Where's he at? You know, because he was relatively young. He would have been there during the original trilogy as an adult. I don't know. One day we will find out, you know, and I guess that's kind of the thing about Star Wars, right? It's like, no matter where you leave the story off, you can always say, well, we'll pick this up in a comic or a book or another spin-off show or something one day. Who knows? I'm sure even they at Lucasfilm have not yet decided. It's just kind of funny that this is what we do, you know? We pick up on old loose threads and then we just make more threads, and that's just what we do here. Also, I will say, the Inquisitor that fights Asajj Ventress, it was a cool fight. I was just kind of shocked by how competent that Inquisitor was. Because we've shown Inquisitors to both be actual legitimate threats against people like Cal Kestis, you know, and even some of the Rebels crew. But then when it comes to people like Ahsoka, the Inquisitors are nothing. Like, they don't bother her at all. Darth Maul can take on the Inquisitors, you know, and so you're like, well, where's Asajj Ventress fit on that? And for some reason, she was like actually, you know, having to fight this Inquisitor, and she was actually getting defeated. She had to get saved, you know, and so I'm like, how does the, you know, are some of the Inquisitors legitimately stronger than others? Or are we just not supposed to be thinking about it this much, you know? Like, as far as like who can easily dispatch an Inquisitor and who can't, you know, I don't know. It feels like Asajj Ventress should have been able to wipe the floor with random Inquisitor number 17, you know? I don't know which one that was supposed to be, or if we've met him before. I think we might have met him before, but in any case, he's dead, so there you go. Now, the Cad Bane stuff. This one, I feel like, you know, we're getting his origin story, how he became Cad Bane, how he became Cad Bane. We still don't get, you know, he's got those like tubes, the breathing tubes on the side of his face. We still don't get that. So, you know, that's another story where those came from. But basically from, you know, street urchin kid who's, you know, scrounging for food with his best friend to, oh, he got convinced to join a gang. And then now his best friend is now the law. And so now they're on opposite sides, and it ultimately ends with a showdown between the two. So, you know, it's kind of a tragic story that I feel like has been, you know, kind of a Old West criminal motif for a while, right? Like, childhood friends end up on opposite sides of the law, and, you know, it ends in like a dramatic confrontation, and that's basically what we have here. I've never seen the movie Blood In, Blood Out, but I think that is the plot of it. I should probably go watch that movie, Blood In, Blood Out. Let me know if you've seen that one. Anyways, that's kind of what's happening here. And it does end in kind of a surprising way. the implication, I don't think they ever straight out say it, but the implication is that the girl that betrayed Cad Bane, that way he would get arrested instead of, you know, probably just getting shot down by the police. She stole his blaster so that way he has to surrender and he lives. And he never learns this until like the very end, after he's already killed his friend. But it seems that her son was actually Cad Bane's son, because like moments after she had gotten shot in the shoulder, she's like, no, we have a future. And he's like, yeah, I'll make sure we have a future. And I think like what she was trying to say is like, no, I have a baby, like we're like, that's what I meant it like in a baby sense, you know. So I'm pretty sure that kid was meant to be Cad Bane's son. But he walks away. He will probably never come across his son ever again, but out there somewhere is the son of Cad Bane. So that's a development. Now, does that mean anything? Am I expecting that kid to one day put on a cowboy hat and become the second Cad Bane? Not really. I don't think that's gonna happen. I think it was just meant to be like a really tragic irony, you know, that Cad Bane shot first and asked questions later, you know, and like that's what you get. That's what happens when you don't ask questions first. You know, mistakes get made. So anyways, yeah, his story wrapped up nicely. I don't really have any more questions about that, so I'm okay with that one being 3 episodes. I feel like that was plenty for Cad Bane. Now, Asajj Ventress, I want to know more. I want to know, so do you train this kid? Where do you go? What do you do? What happens next? I mean, look, none of these characters can live forever, but obviously they're going to keep reviving these characters anyways. And I don't know how people feel, you know, because I feel like her ending in Dark Disciple was a pretty solid ending. The only real problem with it is that we never got to see it on screen, you know, and I think a lot of people would have been okay if they just decided to finish the episodes that they already had started. Like they had the animatics, they had some of the voice working done, you know, and so they still have to put a lot of work into it, but like I think people would have been okay if you just finished those episodes and then just released it as like, you know, Dark Disciple season whatever. But they resurrected her for Bad Batch, and so now you gotta explain that, and so now she's not dead from Dark Disciple. And I don't know, it was cool to see essentially the last couple pages of the book happen, or at least that one scene that is in the book happen in animation. But I don't know, it was a pretty solid ending. It was a pretty good ending for her, and now it's not her ending, so you gotta wonder like, okay, eventually one day you might have to give her a new ending. I don't know what you do, but anyways, I enjoyed this for what it is. You know, like these are small, self-contained little stories that are just meant to, you know, give you glimpses into the lives of side characters who normally don't get the spotlight, right? Like they're never like the focus of an episode, mostly. Like I think Asajj Ventress kind of does get, you know, a handful of episodes that actually are just hers in the Clone Wars. But, you know, Cad Bane definitely, he's never like the main character. You don't follow stuff from his perspective. So, you know, that's kind of all these are meant to be. But at the same time, well, I'm glad that they give us these and they're just like, here, just take 6 episodes. They're all only like 15 minutes. Here you go. And it's like a fun little treat on May the 4th. Like I enjoy that. But it does leave me wanting more. And I'm like, you know, like every single one of these, I'm like, man, if can you just make this its own like 9 or 12 episode thing so I can just watch like the whole story? Because it feels like I'm only being shown a little bit of the story, and I have no idea when I'm ever going to come back to this, you know? So, you know, when do we see Asajj Ventress next? Is it in a comic book? Is it in a novel? Is it in a video game? Is she gonna show up in the Darth Maul show? That actually seems pretty possible. So actually, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say that. She shows up in the Darth Maul show. There you go. That actually makes a lot of sense. But anyways, let me know what you guys think. I had fun with this. There was a lot of cool stuff going on. I think I enjoyed this a lot more than Tales of the Empire. I feel like that one was kind of forgettable, whereas this one I'm like, you know what, at least there was some pretty great writing here. So anyways, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.